meeting of Monday, November 30th. It's 1:15 or 1:16. And I will hand it over to Ken since he seems to be the one that will be pretty much running a lot of this as we go through things.
Yeah, let me just double check and make sure that we don't have any other attendees for public comment, and we do not, so we're good. Okay. Okay, Ken, I'm not sure how you want to go, how you want to approach this.
Okay, well, this meeting here basically is more just a kind of a recap of the earlier meetings that we had to get your manual to where it was. I've got a couple screens open, so if I'm looking left and right, I'm looking at some status things here on your project. Basically, for your project here, we are in the pending adoption stage for your district. So what that means is your manual is currently up through press issue 105. All the edits that were discussed in the prior meetings and email communications have been applied. So that would reflect all the changes in your manual. And you guys had quite a few edits that were customized for your district. So that was a combination of questions I asked her in an initial questionnaire meeting and just various edits that were identified by staff and other individuals that reviewed the manual as well. So what you have in front of you, what was provided back on October 23rd, is your pending adoption version. So really the meeting today is just to answer any questions you may have on how the process took place, any things that you maybe spotted since then that you want to discuss. So that's kind of what today's meeting's for. And really after today, if there's no changes to this manual, pending adoption version, that's when the board would actually officially adopt it. So you'd present it to the board in whatever fashion you want to do that. And then we would just process it once they adopted it and get you your adopted version. So.
Okay. All right. So theoretically, if the committee felt like we were in a good place, we could add this to the December 10th agenda for board action.
Would it be first reading at that point, or would we just go straight to adopting it?
And it's just adoption at this point, correct? Or because it's a full manual?
Yeah, all boards do it different. Some do it in a couple of readings, but because you have a committee involved, as long as someone from the committee, along with the superintendent, however you guys want to do it, explains kind of what took place to get you to that status or to this point, they should be okay with a single reading to adopt it as is, because all the effort's been already applied to the manual.
So I guess that's up to the committee, how they want to proceed.
Yeah.
So I guess were there any specific questions that we wanted to dive into for anything in particular?
Well, Mike, I don't know how you want to go over the various, I mean, I went through the entire thing thinking that's what we're going to do today. And found out the number of policies that actually are there, which is rather a novel concept, and did have some questions and a couple suggestions, I think also. I don't know if we want to go through the way we normally would and just flip through the whole thing, or if you just want to ask each of us for questions and go from there.
Yeah, I'd say for those individuals that have questions, I guess we could just go through the ones that you have individually. And some of the stuff might not be things you could decide today. It might be things that as part of the board adoption, you might present that to the board to make the final decision on whatever your question might be today. So you may not have a final answer today, but I might be able to answer some stuff, or you guys internally could discuss things and arrive at a fine thing. And if there's an edit needed, we could either apply that edit and then resubmit a new pending adoption version to go to the board, or as part of the adoption, you can incorporate that change. So there's a couple different ways we could tackle the end of the project here.
I'm actually kind of in the same camp as Bill. I know, no surprise, we often are. I had
the two attorneys with nothing better to do.
Well, I did have something better to do, but I did this anyway. I had a couple of general points that I wanted to discuss, things that I saw as trends throughout the manual, a couple inconsistencies, and then I had some specific questions on some policies, not realizing that this had already been vetted through a couple other meetings with all you folks previously. I thought we were going through this today, but
well, we
however
can't go through it today. It's just that this has been a months-long process that at different times we've had cabinet with eyes on it. So, I mean, it's fine if there are additional questions or things of that nature. We'll go through everything that we need to go through.
Yeah.
All right, I don't want to rehash anything that's been beaten to death, but if I could at least point out where I had concerns, you can tell me if it's been addressed or
Yeah.
you know what the decision or status is on that point.
Right. And that really is the purpose of this meeting is to see this. This is the first time your eyes are on this thing. We've had our eyes on it for a while. So go where you need to go.
Would it be easier if we just then simply went down the way we typically did, 1.2, 1.3, and just keep sliding through as quickly as we can?
Mhm.
I mean,
Probably.
we can, and we'll just stop on the ones that someone has a question on. That's fine. We could just, if there's no question, we just move on by it. So
Exactly.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, let's do that. All right. So section 1, we've got 110, 120, or 130.
On 130, this was just simply a suggestion. The old policy mentioned having that active partnership with parents in the community. I was wondering if we could keep that first sentence as an introduction before we hit to the mission and vision statements that we have.
Really, there's no magic for it not to be there. So I don't have a problem with that at all. It's up to you guys.
That's fine with me.
I would agree with that.
okay, so I'm going to be making some notes, looking down, flagging things for these edits. So we're going to add some language to the beginning of that before mission.
Right.
Okay.
All we're doing is an entry taking the first sentence of the old policy as an entrance to the rest of it.
Okay. All right. I got it marked.
Okay. Anything else out of section 1?
No.
Okay. Section 2.
I had a question on 2.110 on page 33.
Okay.
And I had, well, go ahead with yours, because unfortunately I didn't do mine on board docs. I had started before we got the board docs. So I've got to be flipping back and forth here. So
Yeah, I'm going off the attachment that Leticia had sent us like 2 weeks ago. Bear with me here, scrolling through to find it. I think my question was whether this was new text that was being added. Something about a board treasurer. Oh, yes, the requirements to serve as the board treasurer, is that being a certified public accountant or a certified chief school business official? That's all new language being inserted? Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So your manual language you see would be the most current press language. So if your old manual was in the past, maybe an update wasn't applied, that would be missing from the old language. So yeah, you're lean towards the side of what we have in this manual here, because this is the current press language.
Okay. And everyone that's seen this before is okay with this new language then?
Yes. Let me just say this, that I mean, we've signed off on all of this language prior. So if there were any changes that needed to be made at from the administrative level, they would have already been incorporated.
Okay.
yeah, I'm going to pop back for a minute to page 22, and I just didn't understand a sentence.
Bill, which policy are you in?
2.80.
Okay.
Page 22 is part of the board member's oath. Down toward the bottom, I shall serve as an education's key advocate on behalf of the students in our community, school or schools.
It would be schools.
Yeah, I just didn't understand that. Okay.
So can we just drop the singular of that, Ken, and just have it just be the plural version?
Yep, I will do that.
Okay, then on 125, and I've got to scroll to that, so give me a second.
Yeah, I had a question on that too.
If you're ready for it, why don't you go get to yours first so that I can scroll to it?
I think my question is whether the P in policy should be capitalized.
Am I on
I'll admit
2125?
it was very late at night when I was looking at this.
You're looking at number 2125 policy?
Yes.
Okay.
In, where was it? Oh, in the new language at the very end, under additional requirements for travel expenses charged to federal and state grants. Blah, 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 blah. The fourth line must comply with board policy 560. I was wondering if the P in policy there should be capitalized.
I will make a note to see how we apply it as part of our style guide. Normally we don't do that throughout. So like if you went to 2120E2, you would see that we don't capitalize the P when we use that type of language. So
Okay.
And then my question was toward the beginning. Under regulation of school district expenses, the new language, not later than the approval of the annual budget and when necessary. Mike and Michael, how do you anticipate, how is that actually going to work in practice?
So when you say, are we going to, what was that again? I'm sorry, because I'm trying to get to that policy.
It's 2125. It's the third paragraph down. It's the new language in blue. At least I assume it's blue. No later than approval of the annual budget and when necessary, the superintendent will recommend a maximum allowable reimbursement amount to be included in the resolution. Are we going to be doing an annual resolution for the daily allowable reimbursement? I'm not quite sure what that's going to and how that's supposed to work in practice.
It looks like we're just talking about the reimbursement policy that essentially we're agreeing to reimburse at whatever rate we've established that carries until a new one occurs. So that if an individual has anything that they've incurred, we go ahead and reimburse it. I don't think we're trying to recreate the wheel here. I think what we're saying is that we could annually go ahead and establish those rates, or they carry over, but that we're permitting for reimbursement, and that if we do it, it's either based upon the date that the budget's passed or by superintendent action if necessary.
So you're not seeing this as something that will come up as part of your budget presentation in any way?
No.
Okay.
I mean, in essence, there's a maximum, the board has, a line item that covers this. So the maximum allowable amount would be what's in that line item.
Right. And if we go over, then we'd have to go ahead and move on.
Amending the budget, we would correct it. Yeah.
Okay.
And just to give you an idea for those that are looking at this, this is a perfect example where some of the customization was done in that subhead, regulation of school district expenses. That first line actually was a custom language added by you guys at the district level. So our press sample would not have that. Board members are encouraged to attend ISB, the conferences, but you guys added that. So there's a perfect example of some of the minor things we did throughout the customization.
Okay, good. The next one that I had a question about, I really don't have a problem. I'm just curious, why should on 140, communications to and from the board, ensuring that the homepage of the website contains an active link to our email addresses? I don't care whether it does or it doesn't. I'm just curious as to why our policy is directing the layout of the web page?
I think you could interpret it as it being part of statute, because the email addresses need to appear on the website. Now, if we could get into a semantic argument over whether that means that they should be linked or not, but I'm going to take the conservative approach and say that includes an active link. And so, that way it just kind of covers us. But even moving beyond that, it's not really a programming issue. There's really nothing there to be concerned with. It's something that, for the most part, even times when I'm just saying, in terms of when setting up a Bill, I can't hear you.
Modernize it as need be.
We didn't hear anything that you said there, Bill.
I said I didn't have a problem with it per se, other than to say I didn't know why it should be in policy. I thought it should be something that we would allow you and Kara to do, and subject to the approval of the board, as a matter of any normal modernization of the website.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I think you're better off having it in there,
Okay.
because it just, I mean, first, to be very honest, it's an extremely minor thing in as far as websites go. As a matter of fact, most websites automatically link email addresses. It's just something that's usually embedded in code. So it's not even really something that anybody has to actively do.
Well, it's also specifically stating it's on the home page, as opposed to, like, right now, our email addresses aren't on the home page. You have to actually actively search for them, in all honesty.
Well, okay.
That's so it's minor. Go ahead. I just didn't understand why we would bother putting that in policy.
Okay.
Can I jump us back just a smidge to 2-130? And this was a style question that I had. I found it in a number of policies and I didn't list them all here. I remember we had some discussions about pronouns, and instead of using him or her, using they or them.
Yeah, Ken, I thought we talked about that, using non-specific pronouns to the greatest extent possible.
Well, obviously, we didn't do it if we made a note of it, so that would be my mistake if we missed that. I'd have to run that by just to see how easy that would be to apply that throughout, because you're right, that would be many spots here. Make a note and talk to our general counsel about that to see if they've been discussing that at all. So anywhere where you have the him or her, you'd want to replace it
with gender neutral pronouns. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll have a discussion with our general counsel just to see if they have any feelings on that. A lot of things aren't going that direction, but we could also work on applying that to the manual as well. So I kind of discuss with them first and then let you know. And if you want it that way, we'll do it. I mean, it's fine.
I mean, I don't want to speak for but I mean, based on the discussions we've had from the committee level, I think we want it that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Definitely.
Okay. So Jessica, you have a number of spots like that. You said you spotted that.
You know,
right?
I started jotting a couple of them down as I caught it, but it was in a number of policies, and I know
Yeah.
I didn't
Okay.
continue writing them down.
Yeah, no, we could do search in that and find all those. So yeah, so if you had those jotted down, we don't have to bring them up again. I'll make a note to do that throughout. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on section 2?
Well, there's 2.230, but I don't know if we're going to be discussing that later under the agenda, which is the public participation point.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we are going to, there's really nothing I don't think that needs to be changed in policy language. But we've got that, yeah, later down. So.
Okay, then I'll let it go for now.
Yeah. Okay, section 3.
Okay, hang on.
I had one quick question here on 340. Hold on. Oh, wait, sorry, that's 330. Oh, I was just wondering why under the evaluation section, we were deleting the in closed session language.
Well, that's language that you would have had in there. So at some point in time, if you guys had added that, that would have been a district addition. So our press language does not have the in closed session.
It doesn't mean that you can't go into closed session for those reasons. It's still part of the exemption. It's just a matter of if you don't have it in there and a future board chooses to do the evaluation in open session, they have the ability to do so.
You're okay with that?
No. No, but it's also that would be a different topic of conversation at that point, right?
Yeah, probably. Okay, I mean, if you're okay with that, then I'm.
Oh, I mean, I'm okay with the language. In practice, if a future board wanted to do my evaluation in public, that we'd have some conversations with my counsel involved as well.
Right,
So,
right.
I mean, that's just, yeah. So, but no, I mean, I think you should always have the option, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
That was the only question I had under section 3.
I had none for the actual manual itself, so I'm fine.
Yeah, Bill, you had a question or a comment about succession of authority.
Well, but it doesn't change what's written in the policy, so I'm going to let that go for now.
No, I know, but I'm just to say that there is one. It's been written, and it will be attached as an exhibit to the policy as administrative procedural language.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Anything else on section 3?
Nope.
All right, section 4.
Can I assume that finance committee is looking at all of the fiscal policy, financial related policies here as well, or not
No.
necessarily?
I mean, they can if you want them to, but no, that was not something that they had that we had done.
And you noted my comment on 420. It's something I mentioned in an open meeting a couple months back. I know finance had started talking about fund balances and what to do, if we hit either the low end or high end of what our target should be. And I don't think that 25% is what we're talking about anymore. I'm okay with what it's written right now, but I'm expecting at some point to hear from the policy committee about, I think it's 30 to 40%, 30% at the low end, 40% for a high end balance. And what we plan to do if we approach or exceed either one of them.
Right.
I think that's something that's going to be a future policy change. But it's just something that I think we have to remember that we need to get to at some point.
Well, and I was looking at the note. I mean, we had the discussion. We'll have to look back in finance committee meeting minutes, but I mean, to be honest, when we had the discussion, I think in a very rapid fashion afterwards, the world went to hell in a handbasket.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I understand why.
What we said, like what we said we wanted to be in the policy. So
I'm going off memory when I said 30 and 40%, 30 off the low end and 40. The idea was what to do when, if we got over 40%, what should we do about it? Start throwing parties or, whatever. But it's just a reminder that we do need to look at it once the world is not going to hell in the handbasket.
Well, I'm just saying that I want to take a look back at those meeting minutes because it could be there, right? And it's just a matter of taking what was the intent in those minutes and transferring them into the policy so that we don't have to change it in the future. We can do it before you guys approve.
Okay.
But I'm not entirely certain that that's where we got.
Yeah, so that type of change, like at adoption time, if you for some reason changed it at that time, you can make that part of the adoption to a new percent if you wanted. But this is a local district percent, so every district's got different goals. So yeah.
Right.
I had a quick grammar point to raise on 430. Under paragraph 8, dividend-bearing share accounts, et cetera. Principal was spelled correctly, PAL. You're talking about the principal office of any such credit union.
Okay.
I had nothing substantive beyond that.
Anything else in section 4?
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Bill, go ahead.
On 4110, do we need to establish a policy that we're not actually providing busing under 1.5 miles?
No,
Unless-
we can't. Because again, it's under code, they can petition, and if they establish a safety concern, so by having a policy saying we're not granting, transportation for under a mile and a half, that would be in violation of what is in
Right.
code.
Mike, I understand that. You cut me off before I was about to say that we're not doing so unless there's, obviously the railroad crossing, the high speed highway next to it or whatever. Just the new language seems to imply that we might be providing busing to just general students under 1.5 miles.
I don't think that that's the take I get from it. And remember, we're also under some additional requirements as a community consolidated school district. So I don't want to tighten it up too much so that it becomes something we need to change going forward. And I don't want to make it too broad that we don't have or not broad enough that we don't have the flexibility to move within it. So I think the language that's there is good.
Okay. And different policy 4.170. And I bring this up only because I remember when we specifically added this, the Soccer Goal Safety Act. Has that been revoked? Bottom page 136, top page 137.
Yeah, so one of the questions we asked at the initial questionnaire meeting was whether or not you did have soccer goals, and we were told no, that you do not own or control a movable soccer goal.
Yeah,
So we
we
would
do
have pulled
not.
that
The
language
Park
then.
District has some on some IGAs, but we're not responsible for them through that. So
Okay, I'll let it go for now. I could ask more questions, but they're just diving into the weeds. I'm done for the moment on 4.
I had a style consistency question. I first started noticing it in section 4, but I noticed it throughout. A number of places where we had the language or designee after superintendent has been removed. But there's other policy language that has been added that includes superintendent or designee.
Yeah, some of those policies, that whole discussion of the or designee gets a little tricky. There's some policies where based on statute, it's assigned to the superintendent. And our legal counsel have gone through and identified those policies where you could add or designee. Other ones, they say you cannot change it. It needs to be superintendent. So a lot of what you see in there for those ones that don't have or designee, that's what our Office of General Counsel is going to say is highly recommended the language be. But we have seen districts in the past that go through this process where they added or designee to basically everything. So when you go through this project, a lot of times they ask that same question. We don't see or designee anymore. So I guess my answer would be if it's allowed and you guys brought it up, we would allow it. But if it's not there by default in the initial draft manual, it's typically not what we're going to recommend you do. So
Got it.
So it's kind of it's a debate topic. Sometimes it does come up often, so. So if there's some ones you're strong on, and you want to run them by me again, you could let me know. I could do a double check to make sure whether or not it can be introduced, but I need a list of those.
I don't have strong feelings one way or the other. I just wanted to make sure we were being consistent.
Okay.
And in places where it was added versus where it was taken away, that was the process
Okay.
that had been followed. So I'm fine there.
Okay.
And I don't have anything else in section 4.
Okay, section 5.
Mike, can you give me an example of a time under 530 where you would need to hire somebody on a non-emergency basis without getting our approval?
Beginning of the year, anybody who we would need to still found to round out hiring, that would be somebody that we wouldn't have in place until after the August board meeting, but we need them in place before the September board meeting. We do it every year.
Okay. And then you caught the redundancy that I put in at 5100.
Yes. Ken, 5100, towards the bottom, there's a repeating paragraph. So it's from existing language, but it says the same thing as what is 3 paragraphs above it. The superintendent shall develop protocols for. Well, it incorporates. You see what I'm talking about?
Which policy is this?
It's 5110.
No, 5100.
5100, excuse me.
5100. Oh, okay.
Page 181.
So the second from the last paragraph is duplicated. It's also
There's
covered up.
it's referenced in the paragraph 3 above it.
Good catch, Bill.
As I said, didn't have enough to do over the weekend. As you could tell from some of my other comments. And then not going to worry about 290 or 310. On 330, though, there's effectively another redundancy, which is the 2020 general election day. I think we've mostly managed, except for the guy in the White House, we've all managed that date.
Yeah, I wonder about, because it's Ken, I mean, do we need that now, or do we need to keep that in as record?
Okay, which policy?
5330.
Oh, well, we just added the
general election?
yeah, so, well, you have the option, you could take it out if you want. My recommendation was, it was just added in because it was just introduced.
It'd be on
It
record.
will come out in a future press issue. So normally I would tell districts, leave it there. It'll come out in a future press issue. Or maybe they'll be updated in some other fashion somehow. I don't know if that would happen. But if you want to take it out, if you're against it, since it's over and behind us, we could take it out. So it's kind of
I'd recommend we leave it, because then it'll get caught up, and then, and that was kind of, the whole with the Press Plus, it'll just, we don't have to, it'll get done.
Okay.
Is there anything else on section 5?
Nope.
Bill, did you have a question on the suspensions, unpaid suspensions?
Not really. I mean, that questions that would change the policy. So there's something I could ask you about later.
Right. Well, and just so, I mean, it's because they're different classifications of employees. So one is licensed, one is non-licensed. So they're different in code. They're treated differently.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had 2 hopefully minor questions on 6-120, both on page 263, education of children with disabilities. The age range being changed from 3 to 15. I'm assuming that's because we don't serve students over that age.
Yeah, if they hit 15, they age up into the high school.
Okay, that's
Yep.
that's what I assumed. And then the deletion of the language that a parent may revoke consent for special education related services. I'm assuming that's covered elsewhere in the press language, or certainly in statute. Was that just a customization that we had?
No, what you got here in this policy, still policy 6120, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, this is 100% press language. So there's nothing customized here. So it's just the current press stuff. So that line you're talking about, I would have to go back to see if that was removed at some point in time.
Okay.
In the past press issue, it could have been a while ago. If it, maybe the district missed removing it based on code, or maybe you guys added it unique at one point in time too. So
Yeah,
but-
if you wouldn't mind just double checking that, I'd feel better.
This is one of those policies that I would absolutely recommend that we stay very tight with press language.
Absolutely.
yeah, I'll do a check and see if the language about the parent revoking language was removed. Just for general knowledge.
And then I had a
Go ahead.
quick language question on 6270. So Bill, if you have something before that.
Yes, 660. We added some.
We lost them again.
Bill, we lost your audio again.
Grade level. Is that what our current practice is anyway, or are we looking to have more flexibility in our curriculum and scheduling time?
Bill, unfortunately, we lost your audio. We didn't hear,
Can you hear me now?
we can hear you now, but we didn't hear anything you said before.
Okay, 660. We added in the first paragraph a change which would allow us to not have as much reading time per day for kindergarten through grade 3. Now, is that what we're doing now anyway, and the new policy just reflects that? Or are we actually changing the amount of reading opportunity time that we're going to be encouraging?
Well, we're doing a minimum of 60 minutes as it is, but what this does is that it gives us flexibility. And so if we do have a situation where we redesign the academic day, we are doing some kind of change at the elementary level, and there is, I don't know why it would, quite frankly, but there is a reason to bifurcate the way the schedule is written. So you have, you're carving out from reading, you're carving out a separate writing course or whatever the case may be. In aggregate, those number of minutes then could be less than 60 just for reading, but your language arts, is more inclusive. Again, it's just flexibility. It's not anything that would substantively change what we're doing or what we would do.
But if it's not going to change what we're doing or what we would do, why would we add that language? I mean, I understand the idea of flexibility, but flexibility would imply there's a possibility of changing it. And I guess if that possibility came up, I would like some future board to have the opportunity to review it.
The other way to look at it here too, Bill, is that if we've got a kid who is reading below grade level, we can have them spend their entire day in reading to get them caught up. That's what that language allows us to do.
So you're saying we wouldn't be able to do that now without this language?
Well, right now, if you didn't have that language in there, it says a reading opportunity of 60 minutes per day will be promoted for all students in kindergarten through grade 3. So you could argue that you're limited to 60 minutes. I don't necessarily think that's what the policy says.
But the language doesn't expand the opportunity. I mean, if you believe the language might be interpreted to limit it to 60 minutes, the new language doesn't expand that 60-minute opportunity.
Ken, do you have any background as to, because I'm assuming that was language that was part of press. It wasn't.
Yeah. So what this policy here, we see no districts ever touch this one. They leave it as is because this is basically a lot of statute language. So anytime something gets added or changed, this is the policy that's going to be touched. So the one in there in that same number 1, it talks about cursive writing. That was added a couple press issues ago. Every district just accepts it. So a lot of the wording here is what comes from statute or code and stuff like that. Districts often don't touch it, but this might outline the minimums you must do. And how are you going to accomplish that? That's fine. But yeah, typically we see no edits to this at all. Everyone leaves it because they know this is kind of the boilerplate of what they know they need to do as a district, what they need to offer, how many minutes before what grade something may need to be done. So that's what I can add to it, I guess, as far as the way districts view this thing. Now, how a district accomplishes some of this stuff, that's local decision.
Right. If the rest of the committee doesn't have a problem with it, I'll let it go. But it seems to me that what our language now would be more stringent than statute anyway, and I don't think it would run us into having a problem with statute. But if the rest of the committee and the board is okay with it, I'll let it go.
I mean, I don't see the language as being problematic, but I guess I also don't quite understand why it's necessary to be added.
Mike, do you mind if I
Right.
chime in? The way I look at it is we didn't used to have it there because we knew we were doing it. And having it there now guarantees that even if it's not us, it's going to happen. That's the way I look at it. So does that make sense?
It does to a certain extent. It just again, I don't know why we're adding the language, because I think our current language more than covers the desire. But having said that, we could let it. I could let it go. It's
So Leticia just sent me a message stating that this is language coming straight from statute, section 10-20.53.
then I have no leg to stand on. Let's move on.
I had a quick grammar question on 6270, which I just clicked away from and now can't find. The way the text is deleted at the very beginning, it looks like the new term is social counselors. I was wondering if that was intentional. It's not a term that I'm familiar with. I was wondering if maybe that should be counselors or school counselors.
Yeah, I think it's just because it was social workers in the old language. So the social just didn't get, so that we did the district's counselors.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're not like creating a new term somewhere of a social counselor.
So Ken, that's on page 296.
I'll see 6270.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I had a question on 6340 on page 302, where it identifies the specific standardized test. Just wondering, given how frequently the State Board of Education switches what tests are being used, if the recommendation is to keep the specific test in there, or if it should be something like whatever test ISB is using this year.
Yeah.
I am
so-
fine either way. I know there's another policy. I want to say 6280.
Yeah. So
Change the language to whatever test ISB is using this year.
Yeah, so here's an example of we're in the middle of a project doing your manual here, and then in issue 106 that we just prepared, that language of 6340 was changed to be more generic to align with other language we've done in other policies. So you caught something that when it comes around to press issue, it get cleaned up, and that's what happens in press issue 106, which we've not applied to your manual because you guys are in 105 right here in this current stage. So it would be cleaned up when we do your 106 updates on Press Plus.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Couple of questions on still in section 6185, just clarification that that entire paragraph applies only to IEP students with an IEP.
The entire which paragraph are you talking about?
The whole section 6185.
No, it's not just IEP. This is the policy language that we would be using right now because of the pandemic. And then in the future, if we wanted to, after the emergency's over, if we wanted to utilize this for remote days on snow days and things of that nature, this is the policy language that would need to be in place in order to be able to do that.
Okay.
Doesn't mean that we're doing it. It just means that that's the process that has to be followed if we were to.
Okay, and then if you give me a moment, because I want to skip to another paragraph, but I want to find it here, 6260. I understand and generally agree with the change itself. I'm just, as a matter of optics and perception, if deleting all of the previous policy gives the optic that we are pushing parents away in terms of any commentary they may have on our curriculum and instructional materials. Obviously there is an allowance for a complaint under the grievance procedure. But I just wonder if by getting rid of, quite a bit of the earlier language, if we're giving the impression that we really don't want to hear it.
I think I understand what you're saying. The issue here is that you're enumerating two different, procedures for, for something that really can and should be handled through the uniform grievance policy. So I don't see it optically that way.
Hello?
Oh, there you go.
Your sound dropping in, Bill.
Oh, that's okay. Mike, I only heard the last sentence of your reply, which I heard you say you didn't believe that was the optics of the change. I guess,
So
Debbie and Jessica, could you agree? I mean, I was just looking at it and got an impression.
Right. What I said before that apparently you couldn't hear is that it's also having that language, is enumerating a separate procedure from what's within the universal grievance procedure. And so we want to handle those any complaints that might come in through the uniform grievance procedure. That is also going to be something that, from the standpoint of if we ever did get into a situation where we have somebody from the outside who wants to challenge a particular portion of our curriculum because they don't like what it means for, from their particular perspective, that there's just additional opportunity for those people to hang us up if there's a procedural error, because there's two different procedures. So to have it all uniformly tightened within the grievance procedure, I think is much better practice. And I don't necessarily see that optically that we're saying we don't care.
Okay. And skipping down a little farther, and I'm glad actually that Bob Gurney, a former middle school principal, is on the call.
Lieutenant's a former middle school principal too.
Oh, okay. Oh, then I'll make it more. Former middle school principal in our district. 6330 is a new paragraph for us, a new policy for us. And it talks about a uniform process for presenting awards and honors. I've been to honors ceremonies in all three of our middle schools over the years, and I've noticed nothing uniform among them. And Bob, I don't know if you guys as principals ever discussed how you were handing out awards or what criteria you were using for awards. I don't have a problem. It just seems to me it might be a sea change for those principals to be doing something a little bit, to having a more uniform practice coming down from up top. Did you all lose me again?
No, we heard you.
Oh, okay.
Bob, did you have thoughts on that?
I think at some point, and I think there are similarities between Cooper and Holmes, and that London, when it was kind of reformed around 95, they were trying to create uniqueness there at London when it was created 25 years ago, or kind of came from the ashes. So I think they were given some liberty to kind of create those and make it look a little different, if you will, Bill. The only thing I had ever heard centered around this was I thought there was a board policy centered around there had to be some kind of relationship with grades. I don't know if that policy is still in here or not, but that had come up at Cooper about 15 years ago, where the principal was told that there had to be some kind of relationship with grades. So at least at Cooper, that's still done.
So I think what this actually is that we're ensuring that when there are awards, whatever they may be, this isn't saying that there's a list of awards that the district approves that schools have to give, and only those awards can be given. What this means is that if there are academic awards, that there is some universal criteria that people utilize to make those determinations. If there are participation awards, that there's some universal criteria, because that then ensures that we aren't in policy, that we're avoiding having any situations where we are violating people's equal protection, right? Like, and so this becomes an equity thing as much as anything else. So this isn't the district taking over the awards programs. This is the district setting minimum expectations. So for instance, if we ever decided to bring National Junior Honor Society into our 3 middle schools, all 3 middle schools should have the same criteria for acceptance into the National Junior Honor Society. It doesn't mean that, you know, that it's that they have to do it exactly the, you know, like, you know, but so that's kind of a broad example. And then when you get down to the, you know, if I've got so-and-so, you know, an award at Holmes that is named after a longtime teacher, right, and it's an academic science award, that there's, you know, some level of criteria at the district level for academic awards. Doesn't mean that that academic award has to be approved. It's just that this is how this goes.
Okay. Very good.
I got to jump back to 6270 really quick. And Jessica, that's the one where you talked about the district counselors language. Did we decide we wanted to add something there, or did we end up being okay with what it says?
No, it's just right before the strike, you know, the struck language, that social didn't get struck.
Okay, so we need to take social out. Okay.
Right.
I'm so nitpicky.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, was there anything else on section 6?
Nope.
Okay, section 7.
I had a quick question about 7160.
Oh.
But Bill, if yours is before then.
No, mine is 7160 also, so you go right ahead.
I was just wondering why we were deleting the language. I remember a discussion about that being related to like the wheelie shoes that we didn't want on our new gym floors.
Yeah, you know, it's added language that I think is also covered under health, safety, and decency. So having wheelie shoes is a safety issue. That's quite frankly, that is enough, right? So having the articles of clothing causing excessive maintenance problems, well, how do you judge that? You know, if you have one divot in the floor because you know, somebody decided to wear, you know, a heel on a particular day, you know, so it's just having that more generalized language just makes things a lot more clean and easy to govern.
Okay, fair enough.
And that was my exact same question. So
those shoes still around? Are those shoes still popular with kids?
Yes, they are.
Are they really? Okay.
Yes. Not as popular as they used to be, but they're still
Okay.
around.
I think mine are too little for wheelie shoes. We're still working on like, walking and not falling down. They're
It's
7
more-
and 9, so I'm
it's
being
more of a middle
facetious.
school thing.
I was going to say I turned 45 yesterday or Saturday, whenever it was, and I'm still working on figuring out how to walk without falling. So,
Oh, belated happy birthday.
Oh, thanks. Birthdays are like not an issue, not a thing for me. I would just
Mine was Wednesday.
whatever. Yep. Just another day.
I had a weird question about 7190 that I hadn't really thought about till I was reading the change in the language here. Under paragraph 5, I think it is, where we're talking about devices used to record or now take photographs, videos, images, and or sound. And maybe this is a Mike Frantini question, but when you take an image with your phone, is that still considered a photograph? Or is that a digital image or an image?
Which part of the, where are we at? Are you in section 5 there?
Right,
Yeah.
where it starts using or possessing an electronic paging device, using a cellular telephone, video recording device, blah, blah, blah. And I'm looking at the change in the language, and this is perhaps a larger discussion that should happen outside of this committee, but just with the way technology is changing, if we're trying to be specific about what we're talking about in terms of what people can and can't do, I certainly don't want us to paint ourselves into a corner that we're talking about photographs when these aren't really photographs anymore.
I think that still works. That kind of generalizes it, and it captures, anything along the lines of an image photograph. I think it streamlines it, and it captures it to be all inclusive. I think so. I think that's fine.
Okay.
I don't see a reason to specifically list out, images, sound, videos. I think that kind of encompasses all of it. Right
I've
there.
also the argument that if you start to enumerate things, you're actually making it a little bit more easy for people to, nitpick through and say, well, this isn't that.
Well, no, and I completely agree. My question was more, is photograph still an appropriate technological term to use? Oh.
Yeah, I wonder. And Ken, do you know, is that have they settled on photograph as the term to be utilizing in and easiestly referenced back to, the relevant legal references?
Yeah, let me look here real quick.
Because I'm betting that could be what's driving it, is that they've, if they've made some.
Yeah, that one's heavily based off of statute language. That's why it even still says paging devices, because it just sometimes they're slow at changing stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where that language is coming from. So.
And like Mike said too, when you start listing too many of those out, if there's one missing, all of a sudden then it turns into what else is, having that one term that, covers all of it is the best bet.
But does photographs cover if somebody's just making an audio recording?
Well, if it's just an audio recording, that also that goes under a different, that's eavesdropping. So there's different legal language that goes around that too in Illinois.
Okay, also on 7190, first of all, I had Jessica's question also, but toward the end on page 361, with the discussion of corporal punishment, and Debbie, you may remember this, but we specifically deleted the word prolonged.
Yes.
And rather kept corporal punishment as placing or maintaining a student in a physically painful position, that there was no reason that it had to be for a long period of time. We didn't think it was appropriate for it to be there at all. And now it appears to be being put back in there again, subject to only it not being prolonged.
Well,
I mean, that was specifically deleted a number, probably, Mike, before you came in when we were going through the manual a number
Yeah.
of years ago.
yeah. So Ken, do you feel like, here's my concern with the not having prolonged in there is if we have to conduct a physical restraint on a child, are we covered under the physical restraint language? Because obviously physical restraint not being used to discipline and or punish a student is absolutely correct. But we do have to use physical restraint at times for the safety of the kid. And so I wonder if an argument could be made that any kind of physical restraint, that they could term that as corporal punishment if prolonged isn't in there. I don't know that is necessarily the case. We can get a legal opinion on it, but
I would like to see a legal opinion on that because the paragraph that it's in specifically references punishment.
Right.
To be used to, and the next paragraph, physical restraint, specifically says we can't use it for punishment anyway.
Right.
So I understand your concern, and I think it's a good question to run by an attorney.
Kim, can you check in with Neil on that, please?
So that subhead of isolated timeout, and physical restraint, you guys do allow, the board has allowed that, correct?
Physical restraint? Yeah.
Isolated timeout, that, okay, yeah.
No, well, we don't do isolated timeout.
Okay, but physical, okay.
Yeah, no, we are in line with what the current requirements are.
Okay.
Sorry, Jessica, I saw it.
My cat is very interested in our policies.
To continue on 7-240, and I'm sliding down to that right now. Do we actually maintain currently a drug and alcohol testing program?
Well, we maintain it insofar as we have the ability to do it. We don't actively do it because up to this point, we haven't had a reason to do so. But particularly for interscholastic sporting, sports teams and such, I think it's an important, it's an important tool for us to be able to utilize if there's a reason to do so.
Well, it really came down, and I don't have a problem with it. I'm just looking at, we had language that said previously we may maintain, and now it says that we do. And I was curious if we actually had such a program. I mean, do we have something written up that we could apply as an administrative procedure, for example, if you felt that it was necessary? Or should we just leave it as we may maintain it? If we think it's necessary, we'll install it.
Well, there's an admin procedure for it. I mean, that's something that whether it's specifically enumerated in our admin procedure manual, the press has an administrative procedure that we would reference were we to need to use it. And also, by the way, when we do those types of things, we do it with counsel, just to make sure that we're not violating any, Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment type of concerns. So I guess it's really what is your definition of maintain? It's in my mind, it's not an active state. It's something that we have on the books that we maintain on the books for the ability to use it should we need to. But it's not something that we actively do.
Okay.
Anything else on section 7?
No.
Okay. Section 8.
I had a question on 825. It appears that we would now allow commercial advertising.
Only if the board approved it. So by getting rid of not, it just gives you the option, or future board the option to do so if you so chose. But it is very clear in here that anything like that would have to have the approval of the board.
Bill or Debbie, do either of you have any concerns about potentially opening that door?
Well, I do know historically, we specifically wanted to keep the ban in. That was one of my questions. I was going to go to 821st, but that was one of my questions as well. Having the ability doesn't particularly bother me. I do know that there's at least one board member who, if they catch this going through the review, might have some issues with it because they were very strenuously objecting to the possibility of advertising in the past.
I mean, there's really not, it's just, again, this is one of those areas where, because it's in line with press language, it got triggered, right? There's nothing, there's no reason that other than that it's even there. So if you guys don't want to open that door, it's not a problem.
Although I would say that given that money is going to be very hard to come by, closing the door entirely is not necessarily something you want to do. So leaving it open is just leaving it open. And again, like Mike said, it requires board action. So I don't think that there's a harm to it, but we may not want to necessarily slam the door shut because it could be a discussion that you'd want to have depending on what happens over the next few years and depending on what that advertisement would be.
If a commercial company were to come to you and make an offer, wouldn't we have the ability to change our policy to allow it if we so chose?
You would. You always got the ability to change policy. That may, I'll be honest with you, Bill, that may stand some scrutiny to say that, well, they bought you off. You had a specific offer and then, let's go ahead and change the policy. I mean, that,
Mm-hmm.
You can do it, absolutely. But that you might open yourself up to some criticism there, kind of changing the rules of the game to suit your needs.
Michael, I understand your point about, this is potentially an untapped resource. I think I'm more concerned about the bases on which we might approve or reject a request for advertisement.
Meaning?
Well, I mean, on what basis would we say, no, we'd rather not have you advertise for our, school band or whatever?
Well, that's
yeah, it's
I
up
mean,
to the board.
it's opening up another avenue where we have to have a set of procedures and we have to have a review process and.
Well, I think you wouldn't have something that's not related to the thing that they're advertising to advertise. You wouldn't have the Continental Restaurant necessarily, be the band shell brought to you by the Continental Restaurant. I think you'd want to stay consistent in purpose and look at that. I don't know that you need a strict set of procedures for it. I think that, that's a decision on, does it support an educational purpose? Is this something that is a company that does not cause disrepute or a distraction to the community by their name being attached to it? I think we open up the possibility, and like Mike said, I think it's a great point to say, if you were to rush and change a policy to get an advertiser, you probably would look, bad to the public. So This just opens the door for it. I think as long as it meets the basic criteria, that's okay. But again, I don't think it's something I know we're not actively soliciting it, but it's something that if we got to that point, at least the policy is where it's at. We can develop those procedures to it at that, as we start to look at advertising, because I don't think we're just going to have somebody jump out and say, I want to give you X number of dollars, put my name on whatever.
Well, particularly since we're not a high school district, this tends to be much more prevalent in high schools that have football stadiums and things of that nature. I mean, about the most I've ever seen here is that, a school needed a new scoreboard and the vending company that we worked with, sponsored the board. And so, they had a little thing, on the bottom of the board. It's, again, I don't want to get too deeply into the weeds here, because if there have been, prior, practices of this not being a thing, it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, we could just revisit it annually if that was something that looked like it even caused concern, or just if it ever came up, we could bring it. But I think we could stick with the longstanding board tradition if that's what you guys think will cause the least amount of rancor.
If I recall, when it came up the last time, it was with a food service company wanting to put banners on a cooler that they were providing to us. And there was an objection from board members as to that. Debbie, do you recall that, or is that before you were on the board?
It sounds vaguely familiar, but Kara's nodding her head like she remembers it.
I believe that was my first year. I vaguely recall that as well.
And that did cause some discussion at the board level, and that's part of where the policy of we don't do advertising comes up from.
Typically we hear, high schools are always talking about athletic fields and stuff like that, but when we get to elementaries, it's typically things they don't think about, like band programs, things like that you might just have as part of the annual band programs where a realtor wants to get space. So it's those small things that sometimes at elementaries you got to really think about, that you're not going to block those from happening. So, and I don't know, maybe no one could buy space on your band programs or stuff like that.
We haven't in the past, so.
What I'm hearing here is that the old language is the language that we would like to stay.
I'm hesitant to allow this change. I'll be honest. I'm willing to go with, the general momentum, but if others feel it's a good change to allow in, otherwise, I do think my preference would be to not include it.
I think the proper course would be to not include at the moment, but when we present this whole thing to the whole board, I think this is the first thing that would come up in terms of us just simply saying, by the way, here's something we had a conversation about, in the event that there are differing opinions.
So with that decision, we could take it out and kind of prep it without it, or you leave it in so they can read it if you're going to have that discussion. It's your choice.
Take it out, and we'll bring it up as a side.
That's a side. Okay, so take that out then. Okay.
Because you know how that goes, Ken. They see it, people see it in there and they think it's a done deal, and then people get their hackles up, and it's just not.
Okay, so we will remove the advertising component there. Okay. All right.
And if we could go back to 224, I'm sorry, not 220, 820 for a moment, with the changes in terms of use of premises. And I'm not sure if I'm reading it correctly, so that's why I want to bring this up. It seems to say that student groups, school-related organizations, government organizations, and nonprofits are granted the use of the facilities during regularly staffed hours. Does that mean during the school day, or does that mean, say, from 3 to 5 after school's out? I'm not quite sure.
No, it could be at any time that the school the school buildings are staffed. So anytime between 6:30 when the guys start, all the way up until 10 o'clock at night when the buildings close. And keep in mind that specifically school-related organizations, government agencies, nonprofit organizations, those covered, like, so when PTOs have meetings during the school day, if their executive board is meeting during the school day, that covers their ability to do those activities. If we bring in, or if a government agency wants to utilize the library at London for a specific meeting, and we've got the list of people showing up and they're all cleared through the Raptor system and things of that nature, it gives us the ability to host those things. So there's a very limited scope of these types of activities that would go on during a school day, but it'd be important to be able to have that catch-all language so those things can happen.
Does procedure allow, not policy, but your procedure allow for it to be approved first by either the principal or you before?
Oh yeah, no, it has to be. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I understand it now. We're fine.
So on 825, real quick, just so you know, that subhead itself won't go away. The subhead will stay there about the advertising, but there'll be a language we added says commercial companies and political candidates organizations are prohibited from advertising in schools, on school grounds, or on school district websites. So there'll be language specifically prohibiting it.
Okay, was there anything else on section 8?
Nope.
No, I didn't have anything else.
Okay. Okay, so then we're not going to be ready for this next week, obviously, which is fine. So we can look at Ken, so we're not, you guys don't have to like rush to, I just don't think it's reasonable to say that by our December board meeting, which is December 10th, you're going to have all this ready in a draft. So, but I think then for the January board meeting, we should be in pretty solid shape here.
Okay. All right. So with that being said, we just released press issue 106. And since we're going to be making some updates here based on today's discussions, what I'll do is I will prepare the draft updates for 106. You won't get those till next week that you could share with everybody. So then we can incorporate the 106 changes into the draft manual as well. So that we're as current as possible for January. The timing works out good for that. There's like 10, 12 policies, so it's not a lot, but minor changes. The one about the Illinois assessment readiness test, that type of stuff, you'll see that change in there. But I'll prepare those and send those to you so you have those, and this group can look them over and just give a thumbs up on them. And a few of them have questions, so I'll prepare that questionnaire form so you guys can answer those. But that'll be great because that way we get you really current along with these other changes we discussed today. So.
Okay.
And then we would prepare a whole new pending adoption version for what's the date of that meeting? January 10th or?
No, it's towards the end of the month. January, we get back on our regular calendar. All of our meetings have been so early the last 3 months for various reasons.
End of January? Okay.
Yeah, it's
21st.
I'm sorry?
I think it's January 21st.
Sounds right.
Okay, so that gives us time. So yeah, we'll get this stuff to you next week. You guys have time to look for the 106 edits. And then even in early January, that gives us time to fine tune it and get you a new pending adoption version in plenty of time to get posted and all that stuff and shared. So.
And that is January 21st, Ken.
Okay.
I'm on a board policy call.
Okay.
All right, so if I have any questions on this, I'll reach out to you, Mike. But I got everything noted here, so everything seemed pretty clear. A couple things I'll run by general counsel about the gender neutral. We'll still make the changes, but I'm going to run it by them too, let them know that districts, it's a topic nowadays. So I'll let them know that, you're asking for that and we'll make those changes. But yeah, I think I'm in good shape here with my notes, so.
Okay. Thanks, Ken. Anybody else have anything for Ken?
Good.
Thank
Debbie,
you
if
very
you're
much.
okay, I'm going to let everybody but Bob jump off, because our next part of the agenda, the Title IX grievance procedure, that really is, more Bob and me.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. And obviously Letitia will stay on. So everybody else, you can feel free to jump off. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Bye.
Look forward to seeing you all soon.
Ooh, Mike made me the host. Okay. I feel so special. So the next one here, this is coming out of, well, Bob, do you want to give a little bit of a preview of kind of why we're bringing this now and why we want to move it forward?
Yeah, we Title IX has adjusted some, and based around, they're trying to make sure that people that want to file a concern have the ability to do so without retaliation and the freedom to do so. And they also want to make sure that steps are being monitored and correctly taken for both sides to make sure it's a correct procedure. So the Title IX procedures have gotten, for sexual harassment specifically, have gotten pretty extensive. There's a slew of different steps to take, and informal resolutions and formal resolutions, and depending on the situation itself. So this was a new policy that's in press, and quite simply, the earlier we can get this into our policy, the probably the better for us.
Yeah. So council is advising us to adopt this in the December meeting, so that we're just protecting ourselves. I mean, we actually did have a concern that was voiced, and I didn't even put this in to my update, because I was going to cover it in a future closed. But so we went through the informal resolution process, and so it's already been somewhat in practice here. So we want to get it into policy as soon as we can.
Well, this is the same 2.265 that we just saw
Right.
going through the manual.
Yeah. It's just because we want to separately take it up, do a first reading on it, and then in the committee level, and then have do an adoption in December.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fine.
All right. Perfect. So that'll be on the agenda, and then we'll be good there. So, okay. Thanks, Bob. I think you can go.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Take care.
Okay. And obviously the last thing was the public comment. Since we're at least for the foreseeable future, we're back to all virtual meetings. So it's we're kind of going back to what we were doing before, which was kind of opening it up for folks that might be attending. But in the agenda, I did put a link to the the responses of Phil's questions that he got from Lynn and Hines, as well as from Tom Bertrand over at IESB. So from a policy perspective, I don't think there's anything we have to. I mean, we certainly could, but I don't think there's anything that we have to change or adopt in terms of policy. I think the policy that's already in there is, empowers Phil and whoever the board president is to manage the public comment as they are able to. But in terms of some procedures, I think one of the things that Bill would had mentioned was having some kind of an online comment card, that would be like a paper trail for those who wanted to, just like we do in person. We ask somebody to fill out the sheet and that kind of thing. So those are all easy to do. We'd probably use a Google form or something like that, and then just have that Google form in the link to the meeting agenda, so that if anybody wanted to could click on that link, fill out the form, submit it, and then they'd be in a queue. So certainly those types of things we would need to do, but
Right. And Mike, I did read the email that came back from Lynn.
Mhm.
Lynn Himes, and I don't think it's inconsistent with necessarily with what I'm suggesting. I don't think we could require, from what Lynn's saying, we can't require them to provide contact information. But when we create the form, we could put, when you fill out an online form, they put a little star, this is required information, and that
Right.
could be the name.
Yeah.
And then contact information,
Be optional.
be optional, but
Yep.
have a note there. I mean, I do think it's important that we put in both our in-person comment card for such time as we get back to in-person, as well as the virtual comment card, that, it is not the practice of the board to be responding to questions.
Mhm.
That, if you submit a question, I mean, we're not telling you not to submit a question, but if you submit a question, the appropriate official will contact you after the meeting, provided you've given us proper contact information. You don't have to provide the information, but it's kind of hard to get back to you if you don't.
Yeah. No, I agree. And there's no problem with that at all. It's just all how we build out the form.
So, but I'm not looking for the contact information because I need to know. I keep a list of who's contacting us so that we could get, I personally or a board member personally could get back to them. But it does help if you're going to direct, Michael to contact somebody about a budget question.
You know who they're talking to. Yeah.
You know who they're talking to.
Right. No, I agree.
So, and then, the rest of it, I've seen from previous back and forth commentary, it appears that our policy now allows the board president to put a total time limit on public participation.
Mm-hmm. He or she would need to, or they would need to announce that at the beginning of public comment.
Sure.
To avoid scrutiny. Yeah.
And you saw the language that I put in there. We might even want to at some point have a conversation, perhaps when we do a board governance review, saying that, we'll never limit it to less than 30 minutes, for example, or an hour, 5 hours if we're really bored. But, whatever it is, we can have that conversation.
Yeah, and some boards I know have done that. They may not have a per person limit, but they have a comment period limit, and then some have both. A per person limit and a comment period limit.
I think both would be necessary. Otherwise, you can get somebody like me up there who will just simply take up the entire time. Okay.
So what I would suggest is I'll work with Letitia to pull together a virtual, comment card, and we'll put it in circulation. And if there aren't any objections to it, we can even deploy it for next week, just to start getting people into practice, and also just so that it's a little less unruly. I don't know that we're going to have a lot of people, necessarily participating last week. It was, knock on wood, it was crickets when we moved into the adaptive pause this time. But you never know. So,
well, Mike, I don't know if yesterday, I listened to the District 25 special meeting. And
they had a special meeting on Sunday.
And okay. I think got another one tonight too. You know what? Be thankful for the board you have, Mike.
Oh no! Oh, trust.
But the way they handled it this time was they required that everybody submit their public comment by noon on Sunday, and then Lori just gave us 10 people said this and 12 people said that.
Yeah. And
then the board apparently got copies of all the comments separately.
Yeah. And that's sort of what we did whatever it was, October. Mm-hmm. And even then, obviously what Lynn was recommending is that, if there was anything written, that we read it into the record as opposed to just attaching it to the record. So we fixed that for November. So.
Can I ask a question about that, or at least raise an issue with reading a comment, since I guess, my mind is always going to go to like the most extreme possibility here that someone's going to submit something that would take more than 3 minutes to read. how would we handle that? Would we just stop reading at the 3-minute mark? But the
That's what I'd
full
say.
written comment would be included in the record anyway?
That's what I would advise, yeah. That way you're keeping it consistent.
I mean, hopefully that won't happen, but
Well, and see, this is the thing it's going to be interesting to see, right? Because this is not just for now, I think this is now in perpetuity. So as long as you are broadcasting your meetings, which is not to say that you have to broadcast your meetings, that's not, but as long as you are, this is going to be the process.
Well, I think it's going to be hard not to in the future unless we claim that the equipment's broken and we can't afford to fix it. So,
yeah, of course. I mean, each board is going to make, can
Right.
make their own decision. But yeah, no, I agree. This is one of those things that it's a little hard to pull back on.
I think the right thing to do is just to keep broadcasting.
Yeah.
Most of
Right.
us have wanted to broadcast anyway, so.
Right.
I would
No,
put on the comment card that if anyone was going to comment, let them know that it was going to be read in the open meeting.
Right. Yeah. And so that, and then also just kind of making sure they understand that they don't have to fill out. Well, we have to make sure that they understand that by filling it out, we're not saying you have to put in a written comment. It's that's just giving us a heads up as to that they're going to make a comment. The written comment, if they so choose, we'll just need to kind of put in there who they email it to. Does that make sense?
yeah.
so just, I'm sorry, let me make sure I understand what you just said. So you could fill out the comment card and then make a live comment, or you could fill out the comment card and submit something in writing.
Right.
And if you make a submission in writing during the meeting, Phil would have to read it into the record.
Well, if we got it in time, yeah.
Well, during the public comment period or before.
Yes, correct.
Would we be able to say that if you wanted us to read something in, that it had to be submitted by 6 o'clock, as opposed to if you want to comment, you could do that anytime up to the beginning of the public comment period?
Let me check with Lynn and
Okay,
see if that's, if we can put that limitation on there.
I don't like that limitation. I think it's, I mean, if we
think it
accept
could get a little sticky.
if we would accept a comment card from someone up to the beginning of the public comment period, then we should accept that virtually as well.
It's just an issue of making sure that the email address that we designate, which we may just open up a new one, say public comment at whatever, is being actively monitored during that period of time, either by Leticia or by Cara or whomever.
Yeah, agreed.
very good.
Yeah, I think that's the cleanest way to go about it.
I can't hear Debbie.
Yeah, Deb, your sound dropped.
Go up at any time. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back, but we didn't hear really anything you said.
I mean, because the first time I spoke, I didn't put in my comment card at the beginning. I waited until I was responding to somebody else. So we could say that, okay, all comments that have been received electronically up till this point will be read. Anything else will just be going into the record.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But again, it would be one of those things where anything that was received up until the point where Phil or whomever the president is closes public comment would be read into the record. Anything, so it's not in advance of, it's up to the minute. So as of, he calls an end to it at 7:53, anything that comes in after that point would be, attached to the record, not read into it.
And we would also need to make sure we put in that people are only allowed to speak once.
Yes, because we did have a few, and that was kind of, I think, why having the online card or, sign will be helpful, because we did have a couple of people, as I'm sure you recall, jumping in multiple times. Okay.
And I mean, I think we talked about this at the last meeting, you know, your people in the public are always welcome to just send an email to any one of us or to you, Dr. Connolly, you know, at any point. That could be a comment on whatever's going on. We're just talking very specifically about the public participation during a board meeting. That I know is a nuance that's lost on many people, and that's understandable. But I don't ever want it to appear that we're trying to limit people from contacting us other than specifying there are different ways to do it at different times.
Right. Okay. All right, so we'll work on putting those procedures together, and I'll include them we'll include them in the board packet, so people can take a look at them, and then we'll, as long as nobody has any objections to them, we'll just put them in place for next week.
Very good.
Okay.
Good.
So, Madam Chair, that's all I've got.
Okay, I think that's all anyone has, right?
I'm done.
Yep. I'm done.
Then we can conclude the meeting at 2:52.
All righty.
Be
Okay.
well, everybody.
All right, we'll see you.
Sure.
Take care.